to everyone, and I'd also like to wish you a happy Sabbath. My name is Kgothatso. I'm a psychological counselor, a specialist wellness practitioner, and a medical missionary. My task today is very simple. So basically, you and I will be talking about how to prevent an onset of cardiovascular conditions. In the previous week, I hope many of you were privileged to watch Dr. Noah Siteba talk about what cardiovascular conditions are, the different types, and the causes. So I'll just basically be continuing from that discourse, and I will be talking about how to prevent it. This is the fun part, right? Preventing disease is where we want to be. One of the things that is commonly known, and I can assure you is true, is that it is far easier to prevent disease than to cure it, right? Because the minute we cure, it has already caused so much damage in the body, and with the distress that we go through with the bodily ailment or whatever type of disease, makes it so much harder to treat. Secondly, it's also very costly to treat disease. It does not only cost us time, but it also costs us productivity. Not just productivity, it costs us happiness, and it also costs us money, right? So I would counsel that it is easier to prevent disease than to cure it. So today we'll basically be talking about how to prevent cardiovascular conditions, and not just cardiovascular conditions, any other lifestyle related disease can be prevented with the following guidelines or tips that I'm going to share with you. But then I'm going to give you a premise of our talk. Firstly, I strongly believe, and I believe that you do too, that God is the great physician, right? He's the master healer. He is the one that invented and intentionally designed our bodies. I mean, we always like quoting David's words when he says that he was fearfully and wonderfully made, right? The body was intelligently designed by God to function in a particular way. Not only to function in a particular way, but after he designed the body, he also set up laws that govern the maintenance and the functioning of this amazing machinery that takes care of us each and every day. And basically, I will be getting into those things. What did God intend for us? One of the things I always I'm also very sure of is that God does not like us being sick. He really wants nothing but health for us. You know, he says it through the inscription of John in 3 John 2. He says, above all things, I wish thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. And we know that his work under the sun was to basically heal people from their diseases. And he continuously, Christ that is, he continuously speaks about healing people and forgiving sins, healing people and forgiving sins. So health is a part of redemption. Health is a part of salvation. One of the things that God promises us as well is that when we get to heaven, we shall have no diseases. He had to mention no sorrows, no pain, no diseases, because all these things are the results of sin as we live under the sun, right? So I have a quick verse for you, lest I forget much. At least you would have taken something from the very word of God. It's found in Proverbs 26 verse 2. It's actually one of my favorite. It says, as the bird by the wandering, and as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come. So the curse causeless shall not come. Nothing happens spasmodically. Nothing happens spontaneously. Everything follows a process. Even disease has a process. It just doesn't happen. You just don't have a heart attack, right? Or you just don't have a cardiac arrest, or you just don't have a pulmonary embolism, or you just don't have stroke. These things are cultivated through our lives, and one of the greatest factors that trigger the onset of any condition, including cardiovascular conditions, are linked to lifestyle related factors. So right now I'm just simply going, don't worry, as I'm just referring to my notes so that we have it in order, this short presentation in order. But right now I just want to talk about the risk factors of cardiovascular conditions before we can get to the prevention, because basically you need to understand the cause so that you know what to treat. Right, so some of the risk factors are basically, I'm going to start with genetic predispositions. Okay, so oftentimes we'd like to believe that it runs in the family. One smart person says because no one runs in the family, and that's why we get sick. But no, let's get into the science of it. Genetic predisposition. What is a genetic predisposition? It's basically what you have inherited in your DNA through history. So normally you'll notice when you fill out an assessment form, a medical assessment form, one of the things that they do require is your medical history and your family history. So is there anyone in your family that had diabetes? Or is there anyone in your family that was obese? Is there anyone in your family that died of cancer? Is there anyone of your family that had cardiovascular problems? And if if there were people, more than one or several, then we know that you could likely have a predisposition too. Meaning if you do get sick, one of the first conditions you may have would be a cardiovascular condition. But then it's not that fate has woven its bound about you and you're going to have a cardiovascular diseases. Genetic predispositions are basically a loaded gun. That's how I look at them. It's a loaded gun. A loaded gun sitting on the table and no one touching it can do no harm, right, to us. It is loaded. It requires to be triggered for it to cause harm, right? And the trigger to the loaded gun is our lifestyle. And we'll talk about these triggers. So I could have a genetic predisposition and not have cardiovascular problems, especially if I am careful in terms of what I do and how I take care of myself. But then if I'm negligent regarding my health, or not just negligent but also ignorant, meaning I do not have the sufficient knowledge to take care of myself, then I may eventually cultivate or trigger that gun, right, and bring forth that condition. So one of the risk factors is a genetic predisposition, and that's basically what it is. A second common risk factor is obesity, right? So when you're overweight, especially when we have a large amount of visceral fat. So visceral fat is the fat around your abdomen. Basically increases your chances of having cardiovascular conditions. It's because the fat that is around here, which is normally, when you're obese, because you're eating wrong types of food, or you're eating excess food, or you're eating the types of fats that we'll talk about that you're not supposed to be eating. What happens is the body cannot metabolize those fats and does not use them, so it stores them around the body. And based on your genes, for example, we know that women have the tendency to store their fat on the lower parts of their body. Males, sadly, often store their fat around this abdomen area, and this is why they are one of the when it comes to gender studies, they are most vulnerable to cardiovascular conditions than women are. It doesn't mean women do not get heart problems, they do, but it's just more common with men particularly because of the high storage of visceral fat around that area. So what happens is the fat can block arteries and reduce blood circulation. Secondly is that it can literally take up space and prevent the heart from lap-dabbing, right, the way it needs to. And so that could also result in one having a cardiovascular condition, whichever one. Like I said, you want to know them, refer to last week's presentation. And then so obesity, and we know that obesity is caused by what? A sedentary lifestyle, which is my next risk factor or predisposing factor, right? A sedentary lifestyle, the less active you are, the more prone you are to becoming obese, right? And when you are obese, the more likely you are to have a cardiovascular condition. And I've already explained briefly why. So another thing about being obese is that it can cause many hosts of problems, including insulin resistance, which can lead to type 2 diabetes. So let's try by all means to keep moving, and I will talk about exercise as I get into the preventative measures. And then the last predisposing factor I'm going to talk about is basically how we respond to stress. Could also cause us or predispose us or make us vulnerable to having a cardiovascular condition. Lastly, diet, right? Very important. Is one of the predisposing factors, how we live our lifestyle, how we eat, and everything else that I've just mentioned. So let's get into it. How to prevent cardiovascular conditions? A good diet is the first place to start, right? The answers to health lie in the soil, right, where you come from. So if you really want to have a good healthy lifestyle, of course we need to start with our diet. Our body builds up itself upon that which we put in. So garbage in, garbage out, health in, healthy out, right? The more plant-based foods we eat, the more prospects of health we have. So you want to eat a lot of fruits, you want to have whole grains, right? You want to have nice plant-based proteins, and we're going to talk about, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to talk about non-plant-based proteins, but I will touch on it a bit. We can get to eat plant-based proteins and plant-based fats. What are plant-based fats? You are looking at your amazing seeds and nuts. We have almost 100 different types of these things, so we have a lot of limitless options, right? Using olive oils instead of yellow heat extracted oils, which the body does not metabolize and just stores in those adipose cells, right? And we then say a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips is not necessarily true if you're eating food that your body can actually use. Because when we eat food that our body cannot use, which is junk, the body just stores it as fat and toxins, and that basically makes us not just have the likelihood to have a cardiovascular condition, but any other condition, you know. So it's very important to watch what you are eating, right? Make sure you avoid fats. Animal-based fats, so because they are so much harder, and I think you can see that they solidify generally, and they have the tendency to do that even around our arteries, right? Preventing our arteries to take up blood volume that they are supposed to take when they transport blood throughout the entire body. And not only will that of course affect the heart, but it will affect every other part of the body that needs to receive blood or that needs to receive oxygen, right? Another dietary principle I'd like to present to the fore that can cause us to have another type of cardiovascular condition would be using excess amounts of sodium. So our cold drinks, sodas, they are sodas. They may taste sweet, but they are pure salt, well, a different type of salt, but that's sodium. And our snacks, you know, those chips that we like to eat, those sauces that we like to use on our foods, those soup powders, those things have a lot of chemically designed salts that are not necessarily good for the body. And what these things do is they harden your arteries, and so they are unable to open up when they need to receive blood. And like I said, it could affect blood circulation, it could affect how much blood goes in and out of the heart, how much blood goes to the brain, how much oxygen goes to the brain, and just how nutrient distribution happens throughout the body. So that's one of the other things you really need to be careful of, is how much salt content you are having. And then another quick principle I've already spoken about animal-based fats is that it's very difficult for the body to use and metabolize them. They are not as soft, and they are not as breakable or digestible as plant-based fats, which are really light, and the body knows what to do with them, right? It can deposit it on our skin, you know, to keep our skin nice and beautiful, and deposit it in our hair, and use that fat to regulate hormones, and hormones that basically regulate life, right? So it's very important to eat the right type of fats. And I've already told you, you get your healthy fats from your avocados, from your seeds, and from your nuts, from olives, and many others. You know, go be a berryan and do your research, so that you are able to know what you're supposed to be eating and how you need to be living to prevent cardiovascular conditions. So diet is very important. Remember, fruits, lots of them, vegetables, plenty of them. Avoid salts and spices, and eat more whole grains. Avoid refined grains and sugary foods, because what do? They make you obese, they make you big. And when you have excess fat, it's going to store in the wrong places and make you vulnerable to these conditions. I don't want to dwell too much on it, but we know, oh no, I just remembered I didn't talk about this one, which is very important, about avoiding cholesterol-rich foods, right? And I'm just going to name them quickly. Your ice cream, I know, right? High in LDL, which is the bad cholesterol that we really don't want. Your chocolates, I know, right? Your pies, your pastries, and all these rich foods that we normally like to get, or anything with a tag hydrogenated or hydrolyzed fat. And so you can just label, read, and check. If you see it in your peanut butter, just know that fat is not going to be used by your body. It's going to store it in the wrong places, and it's a lot of work to try and remove it, to have it, when to burn that fat, to use it as calories. And so that's very important, that you check hydrolyzed or hydrogenated fats. You really want to stay away from those. You also find them in butter. So yeah, we have a lot to learn, but there are options and there are alternatives in terms of how to know how to prepare healthier foods for yourself. And then another thing that could really help us prevent cardiovascular diseases is activity. You know, the Bible says, in him we live, we move, and we have our being. God created the body to move. God created the body to work. After he put Adam in the garden, Adam had everything. He wasn't poor. He wasn't working because he lacked. He worked because his body needed to thrive. Our bodies thrive when we keep them active. So why we need to exercise is a simple principle. When we eat, we consume energy, right? And that energy is basically caloric energy that the body uses to run functions. And the lifestyle that people live today actually has made us vulnerable to eating more than what we need. People snack throughout the day. We eat anything and everything we can find, and we end up having excess calories. And if we are not expending those calories, if we are not moving those calories, they sit and they store in the body as fat. And then we go get more calories the following day, and we get more calories the following day, and we get more calories the following day, and the body just keeps storing because we are sitting. So a sedentary lifestyle is very dangerous for us. So one of the things that we really need to start doing is walking. I always say to people, at the very least 30 minutes of brisk walking every single day. If you're working in an office space, make sure you take breaks to go up and down the stairs. Avoid elevators, use stairs instead. Have short sprints in the day, run and come back, but try to keep as active as you possibly can, and minimize the amount of food you eat. If you're a sedentary worker, trust me, you don't need to be eating throughout the day. 2 to 3 meals at most is enough for you. I could even go as far as 2 proper meals would be sufficient to take care of a sedentary worker or one who uses their brain chiefly to work. And if you are a manual worker, meaning you are expending energy through the day, then you can eat about 3 meals a day without snacking in between and just drinking water. That would be very helpful to prevent a host of diseases, to give you mental alertness, and to prevent cardiovascular problems and obesity, right? So levels of activity, keep moving, right? That's very important. And then I'm just going to get into the last one, which is very important, is our mental health, right? Which is super important to preventing cardiovascular problems. We know that one of the chief reasons of strokes and cardiac arrests are linked and connected with increased levels of cortisol and adrenaline hormones, which are caused basically by stress. We need stress. It's good. I always say it helps us function. It helps us meet deadlines. It helps us do things. But when we live in panic and in stress, so basically what is stress and panic is your flight and fight response. This is when you live on alert. It's important to have that response when there's a snake around and I can jump out of here and run, right? My heart does what? It pumps very quickly, trying to circulate blood through the body to give me energy so that I'm able to get myself out of that situation, whether I need to fight or I need to fly. But then if your body constantly lives in that alert space, it will predispose you, or it will weigh you out, right? Because you are constantly secreting these hormones that basically keep you in panic, even though we are subconsciously or we are unconsciously aware that we are under stress, because we use your running up and down, we are irritable, we are this, or we are going through a lot of things. It's very important for us to just take time to sit down and reflect on what's happening in life and deal with those problems if we have them. Like I said, stress cannot be avoided, especially in the times that we are living. It's about learning to regulate your mental space and choose your experiences. Choose to be happy. We cannot change a lot of things, and worrying about them certainly does not change our experience of them. So it's really important to try to avoid stress as much as possible. Like I said, it increases our levels of cortisol, which make us prone to such when they're in increased levels for a longer period of time. Adrenaline hormones, they all have their place and they all have their function. But when we live in a flight or fight response, it can weary our health and cause a host of problems, including strokes or cardiac arrests. So it is very important. And then another way in which we can work on our mental health to prevent cardiovascular conditions is to seek for counseling assistance. If you feel that you are overwhelmed, you do not necessarily have to carry the stress alone. What I always tell my clients to be deliberate. Be deliberate about your mental atmosphere, and you can take that power back and do something about your situation. And the first thing is to just go learn coping mechanisms, stress management mechanisms, and so that that fog can be lifted out and you may be in a better position mentally, which will ultimately be spiritually too. And lastly, valuing the gift of rest. Rest rest. I can never overemphasize this. Take some time to stop. We're not just talking about the 6-8 hours of sleep every night. I'm just talking about rest of mind and rest of body too. There are times when you're overworked and you're tired. Take time to relax. Read something light that cheers you up. Spend time with your loved ones. Do activities that encourage you and keep you as happy as you possibly can be. And most importantly, trust in God and know and believe that He is ever present to secure you and take care of you. And basically, this is the end of my presentation on how to prevent cardiovascular conditions. It was basic, very basic. So I would counsel you to go study and do further research. God has given us amazing literature in these books. We've got Spirit of Prophecy and good science that does not contradict the principles that God has given us on how to take care of our health. And also be sure to come again in the following week to watch more insights on cardiovascular health as we talk about management. It won't be me, it will be someone else. We talk about management and hopefully curative measures too. May the good Lord bless you and may you enjoy the rest of your Sabbath.